For our presentation, we are studying Point Loma students sitting alone at the cafeteria. This is made by Haven, Addison, me, Catherine, and Chloe. This is our table of contents. We'll be covering all of this today. Okay, our research question is basically three-part. It is, how comfortable are Point Loma students sitting alone at the caf, and is there stigma around it? Additionally, do students feel the need to use devices while alone at the caf?
Now I'm going to be going over the hypothesis for our research. We hypothesize that Point Loma students feel uncomfortable sitting alone at the caf because there's a negative stigma surrounding it. We believe we will find having a device while alone at the caf makes students feel more comfortable.
Our methods for this project was two-part. We had ethnography and interviews. For our ethnography, we observed students at the caf on Monday, May 28th for 30-minute segments 3 different times of the day, 10:30, 1:15, and 5:30. We counted how many students were at the caf alone, how many were on technology, and we separated technology between phones, computers, and some students were reading, or some were eating alone without any distractions. We took notes during the ethnography, and then the notes were reviewed later to draw conclusions. For interviews, we interviewed 10 people who were sitting alone at the caf, and we had a series of 10 questions regarding eating alone at the caf, technology, and stigma. Interviewees included 8 freshman girls, 1 freshman boy, and 1 sophomore boy. We got consent and took notes throughout the interviews, and notes were reviewed later to draw conclusions. We believe that these were the best research methods for this question because we wanted to watch how students behave when they're sitting alone, and then gain verbal insight into how they feel while sitting alone.
Now we're going to discuss our literature reviews. In my literature review, I reviewed a journal that was titled The Emerging Phenomenon of Nomophobia in Young Adults, a systematic review study. A group of researchers were studying nomophobia, which is defined as the worry or fear that individuals experience when they are without their mobile phone or they are unable to use it. The method used to study how nomophobia affects young adults by using the nomophobia questionnaire to gather data. The findings thus stated how nomophobia was observed 15.2% to 99.7% of the participants. They also claimed that the mobile phone offers many benefits such as social presence, emotional security, and safety. They concluded that the increased use of cell phones is a threat to young adults' mental health.
For my literature review, I looked at this article titled Just One, Solo Dining, Gender, and Temporal Belonging in Public Spaces. This was a paper published in 2017. It had 2 authors, and it was published by the British Sociological Association. In this paper, they reviewed 200 online articles that were published between 2014 and 2016 that discussed either solo dining as a social phenomenon or the personal experiences of women dining alone. They found that solo dining, while it can feel very vulnerable, is on the rise in popularity, and people want to crush the stigma surrounding solo dining. They concluded that the stigma is worse for women, but that changes in temporal and spatial norms will eventually change the perception of solo dining for the better.
Now I'm going to be going over some previous research done on our study and topic. I found an article called Eating Out Alone, Perceptions Around the Solitary Eater. The purpose of this study was to investigate the perceptions and experience of individuals who dine alone, examining how these experiences are shaped by societal norms. The study employed qualitative methods, including interviews and literature reviews, to gather insights into this solitary dining experience. They found that eating alone can be perceived as a deviation from the norm, leading to feelings of awkwardness or social stigma. Also, they found individuals dining alone are sometimes viewed with pity or suspicion, as if their solitude is a result of social failure rather than personal choice. So overall, the study found that there is a social stigma, and we were going to be looking into our research to see if we could find something similar.
Hello, so for my literature review, I did it on an article that was titled Nomophobia, Dependency on Virtual Environments or Social Phobia. This research dove into people's dependencies on devices and how it may relate to social anxiety. The treatment in these experiments consisted of the use of medication, cognitive behavioral therapy, and the application of evaluation tools. They found that nomophobic behavior produces changes in daily habits. In this case study, patient communication dependency by means of devices could reveal a root cause disorder of device dependency.
Now I'm going over the ethics that we included in our research. Our main focus was on consent and confidentiality, because according to our methods, we would need these to make it ethical. Since we were doing interviews, we asked interviewees for consent to interview them and use their answers for data for our research project. We would explain the study and what the topic was so they knew what kind of things they would be answering and what topic they were getting into. We'd ask them if they are comfortable sharing with us. Because this is an experiment about eating alone, it could have some effects on how they answer. And lastly, we told them that their answers are confidential and their name wouldn't be tied to it. Now we'll be going over the types of questions that we ask our interviewees. First, we asked what personality that they think they are, introvert or extrovert, and then we went over their views of sitting alone and how many times they sit alone. And then also we kind of discussed questions that would reveal their comfortability of sitting alone. And then finally we would ask questions about the social stigma that they could perceive of people sitting alone.
And then I'm now going to discuss the findings for our interviews of those who were ambiverts. We interviewed 10 people overall. 3 of them were ambiverts, which were 3 freshman females. And their comfort level sitting alone on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most comfortable. One of the girls said their comfort level was 1. And then another said that their comfort level was 4. And then another said that their comfort level was 10. So they were very various. They varied. And then their frequency of sitting alone at the CAF daily, all 3 of them unanimously agreed that they sit alone at least once a day. And then the frequency of sitting alone at the CAF weekly, all 3 of them say they sit alone at least once a day in the week in the CAF. And then their attitudes towards sitting alone, 2 of them say that they enjoy it, and then 1 of them says that she tries to avoid it. Activities while sitting alone at the CAF, 1 of the girls says that she studies, while another student watches TikTok, and then the other doesn't mind just being off of technology, and she'll sometimes watch a show. And then 2 of them say that they feel like they don't have a need for technology, while 1 says that she feels awkward without technology. And then considering how they think others perceive them, 2 of them feel there is no view and no stigma around sitting alone, but 1 of them feels like she'll be judged and she feels the need to look busy. While their view on others sitting alone is how that they believe that it is normal for others to sit alone, but that everyone has the reasons for sitting alone. And then 2 of them said that point moment students don't view sitting alone as a bad thing. However, some do, specifying that some people that are in groups all the time can be weird with it. And then, is there a stigma? 1 believes that there isn't a stigma, but 2 of them say that there is a stigma, with 1 saying that there's a stigma because you are told Loma is community-based. So if you see someone alone, you are confused.
Okay, so here are our findings for our interviews. There were 6 people that claimed that they were an extrovert. We had 4 freshman girls, 1 freshman boy, and 1 sophomore boy. Their comfort level on a scale of 1 to 10 ranged, with 3 people being above 5 and 3 people being below 5. The frequency of sitting alone in the CAF, the most was once a day, and the least was never. Some people said that they walk around until they find people, and others said that they want at least 1 meal alone, so it varied in the data. Their attitudes towards sitting alone, 5 of the 6 interviewees said that they avoid it at all costs. Activities while sitting alone at the CAF, 5 out of 6 said that they would pull out an electronic, while 1 girl said that she normally pulls out her iPad, however she tries not to. But that's her first response. The need for technology, 6 out of 6 says that they feel a need to pull out technology when they're sitting alone. Someone said, yeah, so people know I'm not just sitting there, I don't want to sit in silence, or yes, because it looks less lonely when I pull out technology, it makes time go by faster, and it's awkward when they're just sitting alone without technology. How they think people perceive them while sitting alone. Half says that nobody cares, while the other half says that they think people will assume them to be lonely, or that it's awkward because they're sitting alone by themselves. View on others sitting alone. Out of these 6 extroverts, some said that they don't care, and others said that they assume that the person that they see is lonely. Someone said, I don't care if anyone sits alone, it doesn't affect me. That was a freshman girl. Perceptions of Loma students on sitting alone. Most of the interviewees said that they think the perceptions are dependent on the person. 50% said that it was perceived as bad, and 50% said that there wasn't a stigma around it. Is there a stigma? 2 says that it depends, 2 says that there's not, 2 says that there is. 1 girl said it's normalized throughout college that people can sit alone and eat alone, and it doesn't mean you are lonely. This girl thought that there wasn't a stigma.
Now I'm going to discuss our findings for the interviews of whom those were introverts. We had 1 introvert who was a freshman girl, and her comfort level sitting alone was 7 on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being very comfortable. And then her frequency of sitting alone daily was not specified, but her sitting alone frequency was once a week. Her attitude towards sitting alone was that she tries to avoid it, but she will enjoy it if her friends aren't there, depending on the time. And then her activity sitting alone, she says that she would do homework, she might call someone, scroll on her phone, or read a book. Her need for technology, she says that she feels the need to bring out something, but it doesn't always have to be technology. She finds it weird to just eat and stare. And then she thinks that no one cares about her sitting alone if she's sitting alone, but she's more conscious if she sees someone that she knows. And then her view on others sitting alone, she doesn't care if others are alone. She may make assumptions if she sees them alone often. And then her perception of Loma students sitting alone, she thinks that there isn't a perception of people sitting alone, and she thinks that it's not viewed as a bad thing. And then the question surrounding the stigma sitting alone at Point Loma, she says that she doesn't believe that there's a stigma because she thinks that no one really cares about what others are doing.
Okay, these are the findings for ethnography done on Monday, May 28th. At 10:30 in the morning, 17 people were sitting alone. 4 of them were on their phones, 13 were on their computers, meaning all of them had something out. At 1:15, 26 people were alone, 14 on phones, 11 on computers, and 1 person reading a book. Again, meaning they were all on some sort of device or had some entertainment out. And then at 5:30, 13 people were sitting alone, 12 of them were on phones, 4 of them were on computers, and 1 person had a book, meaning they all had entertainment. In total, we observed 57 people. 50% of them had phones, 46.7% of them had computers out, and 3.3% had books out.
Okay, so here's our analysis on our ethnography. Through our ethnographic research, we observed that everyone who sat alone at the CAF during the selected times pulled out some type of entertainment, primarily technology. The use of technology was almost equal between phones and computers. 2 people used a different type of entertainment in the form of a book. However, one of those people had headphones in. This means overall 100% of the students sitting alone did have something to entertain themselves rather than just sitting and eating. So this was our analysis on the interviews. So out of the extroverts, the census was that they avoided sitting alone and felt the need to pull out technology. Half perceived that nobody cares, and the other half said that they think people will assume that they were lonely, or they assumed that people were lonely when they were alone. Introverts, the census was that they were comfortable sitting alone, but they still bring out technology. They believe that no one cares about people sitting alone, so they don't think that there's a stigma. Ambiverts, the census was that there are different responses on their comfort levels sitting alone, but they all agree that it's normal for students to sit alone with or without technology. Based on the interviews of Point Loma students, half of the people, 5 out of 10, that were interviewed, regardless of personality, felt comfortable sitting alone, and of those people, the majority felt the need to use technology. This is supported by our observations in the ethnography, where 100% of the people that were observed had one type of entertainment. Another pattern is that the only 2 people who didn't feel the need for technology while sitting alone were the ambiverts. Based on the ethnography and the interviews, the majority of people pulled out technology when they sat alone at the CAF. So here is our conclusion on the data and research as a whole. Based on the research done through our ethnography and interviews, the data revealed that regardless of personality, Point Loma students' comfort level sitting alone at the CAF and the perception of a stigma varies. However, a majority of students, regardless of whether they're an introvert or extrovert, reported feeling more comfortable when they had entertainment or some sort of technology with them while alone. In the ethnography, 100% of those observed use some sort or form of entertainment, indicating that it's a social norm to have technology out while in the CAF alone. Point Loma students feel dependency on technology for comfort when sitting alone. This seems to be a coping mechanism to avoid the feelings of isolation or boredom.
Okay, now I'm going to be going over the areas for improvement that next time we would change. So next time we would include a more diverse population for our interviews because it is mostly just freshmen and we want to represent all the grades and genders. And then also another thing we could have added is when we're doing our ethnography, we need to specify which group members and elements to observe because we all kind of have different observations and we kind of should have went ahead and did what we needed to observe. And then lastly, we should have taken more notes when we were observing people just to have more data. Lastly, in reflecting, the most crucial element we should have done differently was our interviewee population. Most students were freshman girls. We should have interviewed more extroverts, guys, and students in different classes. This was difficult because our school is fairly social, mostly girls, and upperclassmen live off campus and don't eat at the CAF very often. However, we hypothesized that the upperclassmen would have expressed that they're more comfortable sitting alone at the CAF and feel like there isn't a stigma. So this could have skewed our research a little bit because we had more just the freshman population, but next time we know better to include greater research of the group.